literally thousands and thousands of pages. And at the same time, while all of this is going on, as sightings and personal experiences and encounters, there was a strong interest in the possibility that the universe was populated by people like ourselves, which was an idea that started in ancient Greece in a philosophical school called atomism, in which they truly believed that the world consisted of atoms, that material objects consisted of atoms that had swirled around and come together to form what we see as people and things and whatever parts of the earth. And they thought that this probably had happened also elsewhere in space. So they reached the conclusion that there are other planets very similar to ours and inhabited like ours. And this is an idea that kept recurring throughout time. In the medieval period, it was debated among theologians who reached the conclusion, or many of them did, that the universe was probably full of extraterrestrial life. This opened up another debate about whether Jesus Christ had reincarnated on every single planet and died an infinite number of times. What I'm saying is that on the one hand, we have the sightings. On the other hand, we have a growing interest in the idea that the universe is teeming with life. But not until the 19th century do we see people starting to talk about maybe the things that they saw in the sky were actually visitors to the planet. And so, interestingly, around the middle of the 19th century, we have the first stories of artificial artifacts and sort of objects that had come down from the sky, maybe sculpted into the form of a human bust or covered in hieroglyphics, very, very Roswellian in their descriptions. So we see the first signs of this around 1850, and that escalated during the rest of the 19th century. When we get to the 1880s, I think people spoke more about artificial objects from other planets landing on Earth than they do today. It's a massive explosion of interest. So I've sort of gone off on a tangent a little bit from your question, I'm afraid, but it's a really complex subject and there's so much to talk about.
Absolutely. And how much of this phenomenon do you think we have created
Mm-hmm.
with our own mind, right? Because when you look back at a lot of these topics, like I mentioned earlier, with missing time and screen memories, that all came from Bud Hopkins in 1981. And then after his book came out, everyone started having missing time and screen memories. And then with Whitley Strieber and his book Communion, after that book came out, everyone started having gray alien experiences, right? So through your research, how much of this has been a creation of our own perpetual thoughts and ideas behind it, and then how much would you say would be actual real phenomenon? Now I know that that's an impossible percentage to put on that, but I just wanted to get your thoughts.
Well, as far as percentages is concerned, yeah, it's very difficult to put a number on it. But I think that logically we can sort of estimate how much of it, in a sense, is man-made. I mean, if you sort of compare it to something else, like medieval knights and soldiers and people wearing armor on horses and rescuing damsels in distress, we know that practically all of the stories of knights in armor were fake. I mean, fake, they were literature, they were invented at the time to entertain people. But that doesn't mean that knights on horseback never existed. I mean, jousting happened. There definitely were battles between people wearing armor. But what happens is, of course, we have thousands and thousands of pages of fairy stories about that. The same thing can be said about ufology, because there were genuine sightings, reports by astronomers. I think some of the encounter reports, if they don't reflect dreams and hallucinations, they seem to indicate that something happened at some point. People really experience things. But of course, all of this interest generated a lot of science fiction. And then there was always a kind of symbiotic relationship between what was reported as fact and fiction published around the same time. So what happened was science fiction or proto-science fiction writers were inspired to create stories about visiting aliens by people's reports and testimonies and probably hearsay. And then as people read that science fiction, they would these ideas would crystallize in their brain about what was expected of an alien or of a UFO and so on. And then they would regurgitate this and come out with stories that resemble those books. So we have a situation in which there was probably a physical stimulus for a lot of this. It was something that was absolutely real, but then so much junk was published and so much speculation happened that much of that has survived into modern day ufology. So, for example, the idea of crop circles. So we know that a lot of crop circles in the 1990s, early 2000s were fake, or practically all of them, done by university students, old men with planks of wood, and so on and so forth. But the idea that UFOs could leave landing traces goes way, way, way back. I mean, even circular ones. And then not only weird objects from the sky, but also fairies and goblins. They also had an impact on fields, at least in folklore, and left sort of circular traces, as the devil also did that in several folk tales. So there's this constant sort of sharing of ideas between what people saw, what they thought they saw, fiction created about that, hoaxes, newspapers taking advantage of people's newfound interest in alien subjects. It's just so complex, and that's one of the reasons why I've spent the last 16 years working on untangling it all.
Very tall order.
It's very difficult, but that's why I've been doing it bit by bit. And the research group that I founded in 2003, it's always worked really well. People are still finding things and sharing things. I think we've accumulated about 40 or 50,000 cuttings over the last 20 years. But some time ago, I had to stand back from all of that and start sorting through it and trying to work out what was real and what wasn't. I mean, the great thing is we're living in a period in which artificial intelligence can help us map these things out, find patterns in the data that would be very difficult for any individual to find just reading them sitting in an armchair. So I have great hopes for the future in that sense. I'm actually beginning to use artificial intelligence now to sort through the data.
So have you done any research into the thought or the idea that this phenomenon might be us and our military with highly advanced craft, definitely when it comes to the abduction phenomenon? Because I've read through the Betty and Barney Hill documents, and Barney, his first statement was that it was the military, and that he saw the military
beings with a very human nose, a large one, the Jimmy Durantian nose, he said, actually. I would say that a percentage of modern claims probably stem from some kind of military involvement, misinterpretation of what they've experienced, and so on. Maybe even some kind of military cover-up at some level. I can't deny it or confirm it, obviously, but there's no reason to believe that every abductee is making it up. But then there's no reason to believe that what they're reporting is exactly what happened. I mean, I've seen movies in which you get soldiers dressed as aliens to carry out this kind of thing. I mean, there's no reason why that couldn't have happened at some point. Considering it's very difficult to find two aliens that are the same and two UFOs that are the same in the sky, it wouldn't surprise me to discover that people in the military or at some other level have experimented with with dressing up, or at least putting ideas in people's minds about what they've seen. So yeah, why not? I mean, that theory, I didn't used to believe in that at all, but I've read just so much about military experiments, psychological experiments, that it wouldn't surprise me anymore.